The station hung in the darkness between stars, a massive wheel of metal and glass that belonged to no one. Apex Station had witnessed treaties, marriages, and trade agreements between 100 different species. Today it would witness something the galaxy had never seen before. Captain Hyunwoo Kim walked through the sterile corridors with his delegation behind him. His uniform was crisp and clean, but the scars on his face told a different story. 20 years of war had left their mark on him, and every other human who had fought in the Outer Rim campaigns. The Veltharian Empire had tried to crush humanity since the day they met, and humanity had been bleeding ever since. Ambassador Ji-won Park walked beside him, her expression calm and professional. She had represented Earth in dozens of negotiations, but never one like this. Admiral Dae-hyun Choi followed behind, his hand never far from his sidearm. The Battle of Kepler 442 had taught him to never trust the Veltharians, even in a peace talk. They entered the grand chamber where the Veltharians waited. The room was enormous, designed to make visitors feel small. High Consul Vrethamar sat at the head of a long table, his forearms folded across his chest. His skin was the color of deep purple, and his eyes glowed with an inner light that humans found unsettling. Beside him sat War Prime Kelthonis, a massive creature covered in chitinous armor. He looked at the humans the way a person might look at insects. Hyunwoo and his team took their seats across from the Veltharians. No pleasantries were exchanged. The Veltharians did not believe in treating lesser species with courtesy. Vrethmar activated a holographic display. Numbers and star charts appeared in the air between them. "We have called you here to discuss the terms of your surrender," he said. His voice was deep and carried the weight of 10,000 years of imperial authority. "The Veltharian hegemony has ruled this galaxy since before your species discovered fire. We have been patient with your rebellion, but that patience has ended." Hyunwoo said nothing. He simply watched and listened. The High Consul continued. "These are the terms. You will surrender 80% of your colony worlds to Veltharian control. You will dismantle your military fleet, keeping only what is necessary for internal security. You will accept Veltharian governors on Earth and all remaining colonies. You will pay tribute to the hegemony for the next 500 years, as compensation for the resources we have spent subduing you." The holographic display showed which worlds humanity would lose. New Seoul, Taeguk Station, the Busan colonies. Dozens of systems where millions of humans had built lives and raised families. All of it would be handed over to an empire that viewed them as property. Kelthonis leaned forward, his massive frame making the chair groan. "You should consider yourselves fortunate," he growled. "Most species who resist the hegemony are exterminated. We are offering you survival." Ambassador Ji-won finally spoke. "And if we refuse these terms?" Vrethmar's eyes narrowed. "Then the war continues until your species is extinct. We have the ships, we have the soldiers, we have the time. You have none of these things." He gestured dismissively at the humans. "You are children playing at war against gods. Accept these terms and live as subjects. Refuse them and die as fools." The silence that followed was heavy. Hyunwoo looked at the holographic display, at all the worlds they were being asked to surrender. He thought about the soldiers who had died defending those worlds. He thought about the families who would be forced to live under Veltharian rule. He thought about what 500 years of tribute would do to humanity's future. He stood up. The Veltharians looked at him with confusion. Vrethmar tilted his head. "What are you doing?" Hyunwoo gathered his datapads and tucked them under his arm. "No," he said simply, "no." Vrethmar repeated the word as if he had never heard it before. "You cannot simply say no. These are the terms of your surrender." "We're not surrendering," Hyunwoo said. He turned toward the door. Admiral Dae-hyun stood as well, followed by Ambassador Ji-won and the rest of the human delegation. They moved toward the exit in perfect unison. Kelthonis slammed his fist on the table, cracking the metal surface. "You dare walk away from us? We are offering you survival." Ji-won stopped and turned back to face the Veltharians. Her expression was cold and hard. "You're not offering survival. You're offering slavery with extra steps." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We didn't come here to surrender. We came here to see if you were capable of reason. To see if you understood that this war has cost you more than you're willing to admit. To see if you could negotiate like equals." "Equals?" Vrethmar stood, his forearms spreading wide. "You are not our equals. You are a species that has barely learned to walk among the stars. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We have broken empires older than your recorded history. You will kneel or you will die. Hyunwoo looked at the High Consul with eyes that had seen too much death to fear it anymore. Then we'll die, he said quietly. But we'll die free, and we'll take as many of you with us as we can. The human delegation walked out of the chamber. Behind them they could hear Vrethmar shouting, demanding they return, threatening them with annihilation. None of them looked back. As they walked through the corridors of Apex Station back to their ship, Admiral Daehyun spoke quietly. They'll come for us now, with everything they have. I know, Hyunwoo replied. We might lose, Jiwon added. Probably, Hyunwoo agreed. But at least we'll lose on our feet instead of living on our knees. Their ship detached from Apex Station and turned toward human space. Behind them, the Veltharian delegation was already sending messages to their empire, demanding fleets and armies to crush the humans once and for all. What the Veltharians didn't understand, what they couldn't understand was that humanity had already decided they would rather burn than bow. The walkout wasn't the end of negotiations. It was a declaration of war, and this time, humanity wasn't fighting to win a few battles. They were fighting to prove that some things were worth more than survival. They were fighting to prove that freedom mattered more than life itself. 3 months had passed since the humans walked out of the peace talks. In the Veltharian capital world of Velthar Prime, the High Council gathered in their ancient chamber. Consul Vrethmar stood before them, trying to explain how a primitive species had rejected the Empire's mercy. They are stalling, he insisted. They hope that by prolonging the war they might find allies or develop new weapons, but the outcome is inevitable. We simply need to apply more pressure. Intelligence Curator Zalvine stepped forward. She was smaller than most Veltharians, but her intelligence network spanned the galaxy. With respect, Consul, I believe you misunderstand the humans. She activated a holographic display showing battle reports from the past 3 months. They are not trying to win. They are trying to make it impossible for us to win. The council members leaned forward, studying the data. Zalvine continued. Look at their tactics. When we take a colony, they destroy all infrastructure before retreating. When we establish a garrison, they attack supply lines. When we send reinforcements, they ambush from asteroid fields and nebulae. They are not fighting a conventional war. They are making every star system we want a graveyard. Barbarians, one council member spat. They have no honor. Honor is a luxury of the strong, Zalvine replied. The humans are teaching us something we forgot long ago. Desperation makes any species dangerous. While the Veltharians argued among themselves, Colonel Yejin Song was proving Zalvine's point. Her special operations team had infiltrated a massive Veltharian supply depot at the edge of the Corvus sector. The depot held enough food, ammunition, and fuel to supply a fleet for 6 months. Yejin moved through the shadows with her team, planting explosive charges on key support structures. The Veltharian guards were confident in their security systems, never imagining that humans would dare strike this deep into controlled space. Charges set, her demolitions expert whispered. We have 15 minutes. They made their way back to their stealth ship, a small vessel designed to avoid Veltharian sensors. As they cleared the station's perimeter, Yejin pressed the detonator. The supply depot erupted in a series of explosions that could be seen from orbit. Thousands of tons of supplies vanished in seconds. That's for New Seoul, Yejin said quietly, as their ship jumped into faster-than-light travel. On Earth, Dr. Bora Han was working on something that would change the war entirely. She stood in a laboratory deep underground, surrounded by quantum computers and experimental technology. Her team had been studying captured Veltharian shield systems for months, looking for weaknesses. The shields regenerate too quickly, one of her assistants said, frustration clear in his voice. Even if we punch through, they recover before we can do real damage. Bora stared at the equations on her screen, her mind racing. Then she saw it. A pattern in the regeneration cycle. A moment, just a fraction of a second, where the shields had to reset their quantum state. That's it, she whispered. She began typing furiously, redesigning their weapons to exploit that tiny window of vulnerability. 2 weeks later, her prototype was ready. They called it the Equalizer. and it would be tested sooner than anyone expected. Commander Taeyang Lee stood on the bridge of the HSS Indomitable, watching his sensors carefully. Intelligence had reported a Veltharian armada moving through the Hydra sector, heading toward the human colony of Seongnam. The colony had 30 million people who couldn't be evacuated in time. Taeyang had 12 ships. The Veltharians had 40. They outnumber us 4-1, his first officer said. Good, Taeyang replied. They'll be overconfident. He opened a channel to his fleet. All ships, remember the plan. We're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. The human ships were positioned inside the debris field of an old battlefield, their power signatures minimized. When the Veltharian armada entered the sector, they detected nothing unusual. It was exactly what Taeyang had counted on. Fire, he ordered. The human ships powered up simultaneously, launching missiles equipped with Dr. Bora's new technology. The Veltharians raised their shields, expecting to easily deflect the attack. But these weapons were different. They punched through the shields during that microsecond of vulnerability, slamming into Veltharian hulls with devastating effect. 5 Veltharian ships exploded before they could react. The rest scattered, their formation broken. Taeyang pressed his advantage. All ships attack pattern Omega. Stay in the debris field, make them come to us. The battle lasted 4 hours. The humans used every dirty trick they knew. They hid behind asteroids, launched decoy missiles, and coordinated their attacks to overwhelm Veltharian defenses. When it ended, 18 Veltharian ships were destroyed and the rest had fled. The human fleet had lost 3 ships, but they had saved Seongnam. More importantly, they had won their biggest victory yet. When news of the battle reached Velthar Prime, the council chamber erupted in chaos. Zalvine presented the casualty reports with grim efficiency. This is their worst defeat in over 1,000 years, she said. The humans have developed weapons that can penetrate our shields. Our technological advantage is disappearing. Consul. Frethmar looked like he had aged a decade in 3 months. This is impossible. They are primitives. How can they? They are primitives who have nothing left to lose, Zalvine interrupted. And that makes them more dangerous than any enemy we have ever faced. One of the council members, an ancient Veltharian who had served for centuries, spoke in a trembling voice. Perhaps we should reconsider. Perhaps we should offer them better terms. Never, Frethmar shouted. The hegemony does not negotiate with inferiors. We will crush them. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us. But even as he spoke, doubt crept into his voice. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Veltharian Empire was truly afraid. Back in human space, Admiral Dae-hyun reviewed the battle reports with satisfaction. The victories were small compared to the Empire's overall strength, but they were victories nonetheless. Every battle won gave humanity hope. Every Veltharian ship destroyed proved that the Empire could bleed. They'll escalate, he told his staff officers. They'll send more ships, more soldiers. They'll try to overwhelm us. Can we hold? Someone asked. Dae-hyun thought about all the people depending on them, all the families who had chosen death over slavery. We don't have a choice, he said finally. We hold, or we die trying. There is no middle ground anymore. The war was entering a new phase. The Veltharians had expected a quick victory. Instead, they were learning that some species would rather burn the galaxy down than accept chains. And humanity was very, very good at burning things. President Sumin Kang stood before the assembled representatives of the United Human Colonies. Every screen across human space showed her face. Every person who could listen stopped what they were doing. This was not a regular address. This was a moment that would define humanity's future. She looked into the camera with steady eyes. 6 months ago, we walked out of peace talks because the Veltharians offered us chains and called it mercy. They expected us to bow, to surrender our worlds, our freedom, our dignity. They expected us to choose survival over everything that makes us human. She paused, letting her words sink in across 100 worlds. We chose differently. We chose to fight. And I will not lie to you. This choice has cost us dearly. We have lost ships. We have lost colonies. We have lost people we love. The Veltharians want us to see these losses and despair, They want us to regret our choice, her voice grew stronger. But I stand before you today to tell you that we will never regret choosing freedom. We will never apologize for refusing to kneel. The Veltharians have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years by making species believe that resistance is hopeless. Today we prove them wrong. Today we show the galaxy that some things are worth more than survival. Today we show them that humanity will accept nothing less than complete independence, or we will die trying. The applause that followed echoed across human space. In military bases, soldiers cheered. In colonies, families watched with tears in their eyes. In ships scattered across the frontier, crews renewed their vows to never surrender. General Haiwan Yun watched the speech from military headquarters deep inside Earth's moon. When it ended, she turned to her staff officers. The President has given us our mandate. Now we give her the tools to make it reality. She activated a holographic display showing new military doctrines and strategies. Effective immediately. Every human military unit will operate under the doctrine of defiance. We will not fight to hold ground. We will fight to make every inch of ground the Veltharians want cost them more than it's worth. The doctrine was brutal in its simplicity. Human forces would strike fast and disappear. They would target supply lines, not frontline troops. They would destroy infrastructure rather than let it fall into enemy hands. They would make the Veltharians question whether conquest was worth the price. While humanity rallied, Ambassador Ji-won Park was engaged in dangerous diplomacy. She stood in a dark meeting room on a forgotten station at the edge of known space. Across from her sat representatives from 3 species, all conquered by the Veltharian Empire centuries ago. The Krell representative, an insectoid creature named Krellix, clicked his mandibles nervously. You ask us to rebel against the hegemony. They will destroy us. They're already destroying you, Ji-won replied calmly, just slowly, quietly. Taking your resources, your freedom, your future. We're offering you a chance to take it back. The Netherian representative, a floating being of pure energy contained in a metallic suit, pulsed with agitation. The humans are losing their war. Why should we join a losing cause? Ji-won smiled. Are we losing? 6 months ago, the Veltharians expected us to be crushed within weeks. Instead, we're still here, still fighting.
Still winning battles.
We're not asking you to fight alone. We're asking you to fight together. 3 species rose up at once, and the Veltharians won't be able to stop all of us. She pulled up holographic displays showing human battle tactics, weapon designs, and strategic plans. We'll share everything we've learned, every weakness we've found, every tactic that works. Together we can break the Empire. The Mordesh representative, a creature covered in crystalline plates, spoke in a deep rumbling voice. And if we succeed, will humanity simply replace the Veltharians as our rulers? No, Ji-won said firmly. We're not fighting for empire. We're fighting for freedom. If we win, every species gets to choose their own path. No tributes, no governors, no masters. The 3 representatives looked at each other. They had lived under Veltharian rule for so long that freedom seemed like a fantasy. But sitting across from this human woman who had defied the greatest empire in the galaxy, that fantasy began to feel possible. Krellix clicked his mandibles in what passed for a smile among his people. Then we will fight. While Ji-won planted seeds of rebellion, the Veltharian Emperor Corvanus was waking from his long stasis. He was ancient beyond measure, having ruled the empire during its greatest conquests. For centuries he had slept, trusting his council to maintain order. Now they had woken him because a species of primitives dared to defy his authority. He sat on his throne, his massive form radiating power. Vrethmar knelt before him, trembling. Explain to me, Corvanus said, his voice like grinding stone, how a species that has barely learned to walk among the stars has humiliated my empire. They fight without honor, Vrethmar said weakly. They use tactics that... Silence. The Emperor's word cut like a blade. They fight to win, as we once did, before we grew soft and complacent. He stood and his presence filled the chamber. I made this empire by crushing any who opposed us. Not by negotiating, not by offering terms, by showing the galaxy that resistance meant death. He pointed at Vrethmar. You have been weak. You offered them surrender when you should have offered them extinction. Corvanus activated a galaxy-wide communication channel. His image appeared on every Veltharian ship, every occupied world, every corner of the empire. Hear me. The humans have rejected our mercy. Therefore they will receive our wrath. I ordered total war, Complete extermination. When this is done, there will be no humans left to defy us. There will be no homeworlds to return to. There will be nothing but ash and memory. Across the galaxy, species recoiled at the genocidal decree. Even Veltharian allies questioned whether the Empire had gone too far. But Corvanus did not care about opinions. He cared only about power. The extermination fleet assembled at Arcturus, the gateway to human space. 300 warships, the largest fleet the Veltharians had ever committed to a single campaign. Admiral Dae Hyun watched them come on his sensors, and he knew that this was humanity's darkest hour. He had 70 ships to defend the gate. 70 ships against 300. We can't win this, his first officer said quietly. No, Dae Hyun agreed, but we can make them bleed. We can buy time for evacuations. We can show them that even in death we remain defiant. He opened a channel to every ship in his fleet. Today we write humanity's legacy. When our children tell stories of this war, they will remember what happened here. They will remember that we stood against impossible odds. They will remember that we fought not because we could win, but because we refused to lose without fighting. For Earth, for freedom, for the future. The battle began. Human ships equipped with Dr. Bora's new weapons tore into the Veltharian formation. Admiral Dae Hyun used every trick, every desperate tactic he had learned. His ships darted through the Arcturus gate's gravity wells, using the space distortions to confuse enemy targeting. For 72 hours, the battle raged. Human ships fell one by one, but they took Veltharian vessels with them. The gate became a graveyard of shattered metal and frozen bodies. Just when it seemed all was lost, reinforcements arrived. Ships from the Krell Rebellion, the Netherian Uprising, and the Mordesh Resistance jumped into the system. They had risked everything to answer humanity's call. Together, the Allied fleet shattered the Veltharian armada. The survivors fled, carrying with them news that would shake the Empire to its foundations. The humans had not fought alone. The galaxy was rising. 1 year after the walkout, the Veltharian Empire was burning. Not from external conquest, but from internal collapse. On 47 worlds, species that had been conquered centuries ago were now fighting for their freedom. The empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was discovering that fear only works when people believe resistance is impossible. Captain Hyunwoo Kim, now promoted to admiral after his actions at Arcturus, commanded the Liberation Fleet. His orders were simple but dangerous. Strike at Veltharian strongholds, free conquered worlds, show the galaxy that the empire could be defeated. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at Sigma Draconis, one of the most heavily fortified Veltharian systems. Intelligence suggested the system held military shipyards, training facilities, and a planetary garrison of 50,000 troops. It was exactly the kind of target that would have been suicide a year ago. But everything had changed. Admiral Hyunwoo's fleet included not just human ships but Krell fighters, Netherian energy weapons platforms, and Mordesh assault carriers. The Allied fleet had become a force that could challenge even the strongest Veltharian defenses. Remember, Hyunwoo said over the fleet-wide channel, we're not here to slaughter everyone. We're here to free slaves. Any Veltharian who surrenders will be treated fairly. Any who fight to the last will get their wish. The battle for Sigma Draconis lasted 6 days. The Veltharian defenders fought with desperation, knowing that defeat meant the end of their authority in this sector. But they were fighting an enemy that had learned to turn desperation into a weapon. When the system finally fell, Admiral Hyunwoo did something that shocked both his allies and enemies. He ordered the captured Veltharian dreadnought to be repaired, not destroyed. The ship, renamed the Liberty, became a symbol that even the Empire's mightiest weapons could be turned against it. On Velthar Prime, Emperor Corvanus watched the reports with growing fury. He had executed 3 high consuls for incompetence. He had purged his military command of anyone who questioned his orders. He had sent fleet after fleet to crush the rebellion, and every fleet had either been destroyed or forced to retreat. How? He roared at his remaining advisors. How can primitives and slaves defeat the greatest empire in galactic history? Intelligence curator Zalvine, one of the few officials who had survived the purges through sheer competence, spoke carefully. Because they are not fighting for conquest, Emperor. They are fighting for survival. Every battle they win gives hope to others. Every world we lose inspires 10 more rebellions. Then we will make examples. Corvanus slammed his fist on his throne. Burn the rebel worlds. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy us. "We have tried that, Emperor," Zelvine said quietly. "It only makes them fight harder." The Emperor's eyes blazed with rage, but before he could respond, an urgent message arrived. War Prime Kelthonis, one of his most loyal commanders, had requested a secret meeting with the human ambassador. It was treason, and everyone in the room knew it. Ambassador Jiwan Park met Kelthonis on a neutral station, accompanied only by a small security detail. The War Prime arrived alone, which was perhaps the most telling detail of all. A Veltharian military commander who arrived without guards was either very confident or very desperate. Kelthonis looked at Jiwan with what might have been respect. "You have broken the Empire," he said without preamble. "I came to tell you why." Jiwan gestured to a chair. "I'm listening." The War Prime sat heavily, his massive frame making the furniture creak. "The Veltharian Empire has been dying for centuries. We just hit it well. Our resources are depleted. Our economy relies on tribute from conquered worlds. Our military is stretched across 1,000 systems. We maintained power not through strength but through the illusion of strength." He activated a holographic display showing the Empire's true state: rebellions on dozens of worlds, supply shortages, military units refusing orders, economic collapse in the core worlds. When you walked out of those peace talks, you did something no species has ever done. You showed the galaxy that the Emperor has no clothes. Jiwan studied the data carefully. "Why are you telling me this?" "Why betray your empire?" "Because the Empire is already dead," Kelthonis said bluntly. "Emperor Corvanus refuses to see it. He will fight until every Veltharian is dead rather than admit defeat. I am trying to save my people from annihilation." He leaned forward. "I can give you intelligence, fleet movements, defense codes, locations of key installations. In exchange, I want asylum for myself and any Veltharian who wishes to defect. I want a guarantee that when this war ends, there will be a future for my species beyond slavery or extinction." Jiwan considered his offer. Trust a Veltharian military commander who had probably killed thousands of humans. It was a gamble, but wars were won by taking calculated risks. "Agreed," she said. "But you will stand trial for war crimes. If you are truly remorseful, you will accept whatever judgment comes." "I accept," Kelthonis said. "Better to face justice than die for a madman's pride." The intelligence Kelthonis provided changed the war. The Allied fleet began striking at targets with surgical precision. They avoided heavily defended worlds and instead focused on cutting off supply lines. They isolated Veltharian fleets and forced them to surrender, rather than fight to the death. They showed mercy to those who laid down their weapons, and ruthless efficiency to those who didn't. The decisive battle came at the Heart Nebula, where the Veltharian Home Guard made its last stand. The Home Guard was supposed to be invincible, an elite force that protected the core worlds. They had never been deployed outside Veltharian space because their very presence was supposed to guarantee security. Admiral Hyun Woo faced them with the combined Allied fleet. The battle was fierce and costly. Ships on both sides were torn apart by weapons fire. The nebula itself became a chaotic battlefield where sensors barely worked, and every engagement was fought at knife-fighting range. But the humans and their allies had something the Veltharians had lost: belief in their cause. They fought not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to. That made all the difference. When the Home Guard broke and retreated toward Velthar Prime, the galaxy held its breath. The unthinkable had happened. The Empire's ultimate defense had failed. Emperor Corvanus watched the retreating ships on his display and knew that the end had come. His empire, which had stood for 10 millennia, was collapsing. He could order a last stand, turn Velthar Prime into a fortress and fight to the last Veltharian. Or he could accept reality. For the first time in his long life, Corvanus felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. Not about his power or his right to rule, but about whether that power and that right meant anything if they left his species extinct. He slumped on his throne, suddenly looking every one of his thousands of years. "Contact the humans," he said quietly. Tell them we wish to discuss terms." The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Veltharian Empire, the eternal power that had ruled for 10,000 years, was asking for peace. And this time they would be the ones listening to terms, not dictating them. Ambassador Jiwan received the message and allowed herself a small smile. The war was not over yet, but for the first time she could see how it would end. Not with humanity ruling the ashes, but with every species finally free to choose their own destiny. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were celebrating, but he knew the hardest part was still to come. Winning a war was one thing. Building a lasting peace was something else entirely. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "We're going back to Apex Station. Time to finish what we started." Apex Station looked exactly the same as it had 18 months ago, but everything about the meeting was different. Admiral Hyunwoo Kim walked through the same corridors he had walked before, but this time he walked as a victor, not a desperate defender. Ambassador Ji-won Park accompanied him, along with representatives from the Krell, Netherian, and Mordish peoples. They were no longer conquered subjects. They were free nations. The Grand Chamber where the first meeting had failed now held a very different group. Consul Vrethmar sat at the table, but he was no longer the proud representative of an eternal empire. His forearms hung limply at his sides. His eyes, once bright with superiority, were now dim with exhaustion and defeat. Beside him sat other Veltharian officials, all wearing the same expression of people who had lost everything. Admiral Hyunwoo took his seat across from them. The silence was heavy with irony. Same room, same table. Opposite positions. Vrethmar spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. We wish to discuss terms of peace." President Sumin Kang appeared via holographic projection, addressing the meeting from Earth. "Before we discuss terms, let me be clear about what has changed. 18 months ago, you called us here expecting us to surrender. You offered us slavery and called it mercy. You expected us to be grateful for the privilege of serving the Veltharian Empire." She paused, letting every word hit its mark. "You were wrong about us, about your empire, about the nature of power itself. You believed that might make right. That superior technology and larger fleets meant you could dictate the future. You forgot that sentient beings will always choose freedom over safety, dignity over survival." Vrethmar closed his eyes, accepting the truth of her words. Ambassador Ji-won opened a document on the holographic display. "These are our terms. Not terms of surrender, but terms for a lasting peace." She began reading. "First, all species currently under Veltharian control will be granted immediate independence. No exceptions, no delays, no conditions." A Veltharian official started to protest, but Vrethmar raised a hand to stop him. "Continue," he said quietly. "Second," Ji-won went on, "the Veltharian military will withdraw from all occupied worlds within 6 months. Any forces that remain after that deadline will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. Third, the Veltharian Empire will pay reparations for damages caused during the war. The amount and schedule will be determined by an independent council representing all affected species." The Veltharian officials looked at each other with barely concealed distress. They had expected harsh terms, but the reality was still difficult to hear. "Fourth," Ji-won continued, "all Veltharian officials accused of war crimes will stand trial before an interspecies court. This includes military commanders, governors, and administrators who ordered or committed atrocities. The trials will be fair, but they will happen." One of the Veltharian officials stood abruptly. "This is humiliation. You ask us to surrender our sovereignty, our dignity." Admiral Hyunwoo cut him off with a cold stare. "We could ask for much more. We could demand that Velthar Prime be occupied. We could require Veltharian children be educated in our schools. We could make you pay tribute for 1,000 years. We could do to you exactly what you plan to do to us." He leaned forward. "But we are not you. We do not seek to replace one empire with another. We seek justice, not revenge." The official sat down slowly, the fight going out of him. Vrethmar looked at the terms displayed before him. "And if we refuse? If we fight on?" President Sumin's image looked at him with something like pity. "Then you will lose everything. Your core worlds will be blockaded. Your economy will collapse. Your people will starve. And eventually, someone in your government will decide that survival is more important than pride and will accept these terms anyway. Except by then more people will have died for nothing." She softened her tone slightly. "We are not asking you to cease existing as a people or a culture. We are asking you to cease being an empire, to join the galaxy as equals instead of masters. That is not death. That is transformation." The Veltharian delegation requested a recess to discuss the terms. For 3 hours they argued behind closed doors. Some wanted to fight on, believing that a last stand would preserve Veltharian honor. Others argued that accepting the terms was the only way to ensure their species survived. In the end, Vrethmar made the decision. He had been the one who had offered humanity slavery. Now he would be the one to accept the Empire's end. It was fitting in a tragic way. When they returned to the chamber, Vrethmar approached the table with a datapad in his hands. "We accept your terms," he said, his voice breaking. "The Veltharian Empire formally surrenders and will comply with all conditions outlined by the Allied coalition." He signed the document with a trembling hand. As his signature appeared on the display, something fundamental shifted in the galaxy. An empire that had stood for 10,000 years officially ended. Not with a glorious battle or heroic last stand, but with a signature on a peace treaty. Tears ran down Vrethmar's face, leaving trails on his purple skin. "We were gods," he whispered. "We ruled the stars. How did we fall so far?" Ambassador G1 Park looked at him with unexpected compassion. "You fell the moment you forgot that every species you conquered was made of people just like you. People who wanted to live free. People who would die rather than kneel. You could have been leaders. Instead, you chose to be masters. That was your mistake." The formal ceremony ended and news spread across the galaxy. The Veltharian Empire was no more. Dozens of species that had lived under occupation for centuries were suddenly free. The reaction was not universal celebration. Some places erupted in joy. Others faced the difficult task of rebuilding societies that had been controlled for so long that no one remembered how to govern themselves. 10 days after the signing, Warprime Kelthonis stood before an interspecies tribunal. He was charged with war crimes spanning 3 decades of service. He did not deny any of the charges. He did not make excuses. He simply told the truth about what he had done and accepted responsibility. The tribunal sentenced him to life imprisonment, but also acknowledged his role in ending the war. It was justice, but not vengeance. It was exactly what humanity had promised. President Sumin Kang addressed Earth and all human colonies one final time. 10 years from now, when we look back at this moment, I hope we remember not just that we won, but how we won. We won by refusing to accept less than we deserved. We won by inspiring others to fight for their freedom. We won by remembering that we are human and that means something. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. The easy choice was to accept the Veltharian terms. To survive as subjects, to kneel and live. We chose the hard path. We chose to fight even when victory seemed impossible. And because we made that choice, billions of beings across dozens of species are now free. On Apex Station, Admiral Hyun-woo and Ambassador Ji-won stood together at an observation window, watching ships from dozens of freed species depart to their homeworlds. Each ship represented a civilization that could now write its own destiny. "Do you think they understand what we did?" Ji-won asked quietly. "Not just winning the war, but breaking the cycle of empire." Hyun-woo was silent for a moment, thinking. "Some do, some will. Some never will." He turned to look at her. "But that's not why we did it. We didn't fight to be remembered or celebrated. We fought because slavery is wrong, no matter what name you give it. We fought because some things are worth dying for, and we won because we were willing to pay that price." Ji-won smiled. The Veltharians could never understand that. They thought power meant the ability to force others to obey. They never learned that real power is the ability to choose your own path, even if that path is hard. A decade later, the former Veltharian territories had transformed into the Free Galactic Cooperative. Species that had once been enemies worked together as partners. Humans served alongside Krell, Netherian, Mordesh, and even reformed Veltharians who had embraced the new order. The galaxy remembered humanity not as conquerors or warriors, but as the species that valued freedom over survival and won both. They remembered the walkout, the moment when humanity said no to an empire and changed the course of history. Children across 100 worlds learned about Admiral Hyun-woo Kim, Ambassador Ji-won Park, and all the others who had fought for something bigger than themselves. They learned that empires fall when people remember they are not property. They learned that the word no can be more powerful than any weapon. And on Earth, in a memorial garden dedicated to those who fell in the war, a simple inscription captured everything. They offered us chains. We offered them a choice. They chose war. We chose freedom, and in choosing freedom we set the galaxy free. The stars belong to no empire now. They belong to everyone.